To be part of a task force that is now being utilized nationally, and to know that we've collected more information than any other entity in the States, it feels good on one level and it's heartbreaking on another level. We shouldn't have ever had to do this. Sex trafficking started here with Columbus, who was the first trafficker of Indigenous people. And it's continued to this day. Murdering our people has continued to this day. But at least now we have a voice in a way we've never had before. We have the data, we have the research, we have the forensic interviews, we have a battle plan that we've never had before.
One of the things we're hopeful is that the task force will really serve as a blueprint to be able to then drive what does that look like for our law enforcement, for our cities, for all of our agencies and organizations that in a case that comes in and involves trafficking, that, you know, investigations of missing and suspicious deaths, to data, to the prosecution, to all of those things to be able to work better, collaborate more effectively across all of those lines and jurisdictions to be able to bring resolve, right, justice, accountability, and for our communities to heal.
The MMIR office is such a crucial component. All of our work on the task force would have been negated in so many ways if we didn't have the follow through. And we also have to look at the aspect of this issue isn't gone. Our goal is one day we don't need these things. But when you have at least 5,000 Native Americans going missing on a continual basis, when you see our suicide rates 10 times higher than the national average, when you see, you know, sexual assault so much higher.
If we look at people as disposable, that we can harm them, we have to teach and unlearn that. And a lot of times what we find is in studies here in Duluth and nationally that perpetrators tend to be, though not always, but they tend to be non-Native and male.
Sex trafficking and human trafficking is one of the leading causes of MMIWR. And for myself, you know, when I was trafficked, it was because I was, you know, really heavy in grief. I was using drugs and alcohol, and I was completely vulnerable to the lies that my trafficker told me. I was trafficked through casinos in Las Vegas. There were times where I didn't think I was going to make it home. I was held in room for 5 days with no water, no air conditioning or anything like that. Growing up in a abusive household and, you know, surrounded by alcoholism and just that historical and multi-generational trauma, it's a cycle that is very hard to break for Indigenous peoples. Traffickers know that. They target Native women and girls because of that.
That lack of coverage in media, in how it's misrepresented, or we go with a lack of coverage, really compounds that when we go missing or we're murdered, you know, it's not picked up and then it's not followed through. And then a lot of times community members are the ones actually out there looking for community. And so with the community of Duluth, you know, what we're doing in law enforcement agencies, we actually have a dedicated staff, a dedicated investigator who's specifically working on sex trafficking, on human trafficking, and, you know, really to put an end and to resolve these cases and more quickly.
We have to stop this for our children and our grandchildren, because you hear it over and over. When you can't go to one friend and say, hey, tell me this hasn't happened in your family. when you can't have a conversation with another Native where this somewhere along the line doesn't come up. It's brutal. To look in a mother's eyes that's lost her child, or a father's, or a grandparent, a sibling, a child who's lost mom, it haunts you. To look in the eyes of a survivor that has been brutally attacked in one form or another, and to see it there. Even when they're smiling and happy, to still see it there. It never leaves you. Those interviews of those that came forward, I'll carry them to my grave. There's not a day that I don't think of them and their families and go through the list in my mind. People like Jeremy Jourdain or Sheila St. Clair that are still missing and their families don't have the answers. To know that every time my daughters walk out the door, I make a mental note of what they're wearing. I still have to worry. That's never going to go away. I have to worry about nieces and nephews and friends and so many others out there. It's never going to go away unless we as a whole, we as a nation, stop this cycle. We deserve to live and to be safe. It has to stop.